Let me invite the first speaker of this session. It will be presented by Anai Ribata, a research analyst from telegeography. She'll be talking on the topic of connectivity trends in Asian markets. So please.
Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone is doing okay. It's only 90 more minutes for lunch, so I promise I'll be fast. And before, I guess I'm gonna move here so you guys can see me. Before I start, I really want to thank BKNIX for the opportunity to be here today. And my name is Anai Ribata, and I work at telegeography, and today's presentation is going to be about connectivity trends in Asian markets. Okay, so for those that are not familiar with telegeography, we are a market research firm based in Washington, D.C., and our research focuses on international networks on the telecommunications market at the wholesale and enterprise level. Most of the data that you're going to see here today comes from our Global Bandwidth Research Service report, and it has been updated recently. And throughout the presentation, you're going to hear me saying the term use international bandwidth over and over. So I want to clarify how we define this term. Use international bandwidth refers to the sum of all capacity deployed for internet backbones, which is a public internet IP public links. Private networks. Private networks have like different elements, but they're mostly formed by content providers. But they also include financial institutions, educational and research agencies, as well as government entities. And last but not least, there is still capacity deployed for switch voice networks, although it's very, very little. Okay, we're going to start. Around the globe, demand for international bandwidth continues to grow. And because of this robust growth, operators around the world continue to undertake new network deployments as well as new network upgrades. Between 2014 and 2015, the pace of growth of international bandwidth increased at 40% globally and reached about 295 terabits per second by the end of December 2015. So how does this demand looks at the regional level, and how does Asia position versus the rest of the world? So the graph here shows the compound annual growth rate, or CAGR, of bandwidth demand across the different regions that we study at telegeography. And if we pay attention, Africa, Asia, and Oceania, they have CAGRs of about 50% between 2011 and 2015. And let's keep in mind that bandwidth demand growth has to do a lot with levels of network adoption across the different regions. But by no means I want to underestimate the CAGRs experienced in Latin America and the Middle East. They also have a strong CAGRs of about 40%. And even the very mature and established markets of the United States and Europe, they have experienced quite a growth of about 40% CAGRs. So taking a look here in Asia, Asia international bandwidth usage, it's pretty strong, as we can see in this graph. And even though it has been a decline on the pace of growth this past year, this happened because demand in Asia, it's becoming more mature, and it's more in line with what we're seeing in the Euros of in the markets of Europe and the US. Just to give you the right numbers, annual growth of bandwidth demand in Asia was 43% this past year. In the United States was 42%, and in Europe was 39%. So we're seeing like Asia, it's slowly getting in line with demand on other regions. Something that I would like to point out is bandwidth usage in terms of absolute values is doubling every 2 years. In 2011, we estimate about 10 terabits per second for use international bandwidth. In 2013, about 22 terabits per second. And this past December, it's close to 49 terabits per second. So similar to how bandwidth usage varies greatly by region, it also varies greatly at the country level within one region. This is international bandwidth usage by country for a few markets here in Asia. Blue bars show use bandwidth as of December 2015, and the yellow bars show the CAGR of the past 3 years. So Asia in particular is quite interesting because we have two very different markets. On one hand, we have a handful of countries that have had ample bandwidth for quite some time. Most of them, the East Asian nations of like China, Japan, Singapore, even South Korea and Taiwan. And on the other hand, we have those markets that even though have low level of usage, they do have very high levels of CAGR. That means that we're seeing that demand on these countries are picking up. This has to do a lot with access to international connectivity. So just to give you an example, Japan by 2018, and including those submarine cables that are proposed, will have 21 submarine cables by the end of 2018. While Cambodia, on the other hand, will see, hopefully, its first submarine cable by the end of this year. So there's a big, big gap between access to connectivity at the international level among the different countries here in Asia. And this kind of comes in line with what we've been hearing before. This is Thailand, and since we're here in Bangkok, I really want to show this graph. And I'm happy that it's very close to what the speaker of NetCat presented earlier today. This data only concerns to international internet bandwidth. This is all like public IP, and it's as of June 2015. So Singapore and Malaysia are the top routes for international connectivity here in Bangkok, in Thailand, and they make up more of the 50% of internet into the country, followed by the United States, China, and others. Among the 30% for others, we have two European countries, United Kingdom and France. We have Australia for Oceania, and the rest of countries are here neighbor countries like Cambodia, Laos, and Myanmar. Go back to the global overview. The US remains as the major hub for international bandwidth connectivity. In 2015, about 83% of the used international bandwidth was, of the used interregional international bandwidth was connected to the United States and Canada. This is down from the 96% that we estimate back in 2005. So it has been a decline on the, on the reliability of connectivity to the United States. And we believe this has happened because there have been an influx of new routes for submarine cables globally. We're seeing a lot of investments in Asia, in Africa, in the Middle East, and even in Europe. So this trend is going to continue, and we're going to see like all the other regions are going to keep decentralizing away from the US, which is a good sign. And Asia is following that pattern. So Asia continues to decentralize away from the US. Let's take a close look at this graph in particular. So this is the share of international connectivity by regions here connected in Asia. Green is bandwidth connected to the US. Blue is intra-Asia connectivity, and red is Europe. If we take a look at the green bars, the share of connectivity is slowly declining these past 4 years. So in 2011, connectivity to the US make up about 51%, and in 2015 went down to 47%. In 2011, intra-Asia connectivity accounted for 36%. 4 years later, now we have 41%. So this is good. We want intra-connectivity in one region, and mainly we believe this has happened because a lot of the content is being hosted and cached locally and domestically here in the region instead of going all the way back to the US or Europe. And this trend for intra-regional connectivity is the same across the other regions in the globe. Same way as there has been a shift in connectivity in Asia, there's also a shift in the source of Asia bandwidth demand. The graph here shows the 3 elements of bandwidth international usage. I don't know if you guys can see it, but there's like a very thin yellow line on the top, and that's capacity deployed for voice, which is like very, very teeny tiny, it's less than 1%. But then we have the big 2 elements. Red is for IP backbones, and blue for private networks. And as I mentioned before, private networks are mostly formed by content providers. We're talking about the Googles, the Facebooks, the Microsofts, the Amazons. And this graph in particular shows intra-Asia. This doesn't take into account trans-Pacific, okay? So if we see content providers are deploying lots of capacity here in the region, and the growth for international bandwidth demand comes mostly from the content providers. So the share of connectivity, the share of used international bandwidth for content from private networks, was about 21% in 2005, and it's about 42% in 2015. We expect that this trend is going to continue to grow. So where are located? Where are like these content providers, guys, located? The icons that are colored are data centers that are already operational. And as you can see, they are everywhere across the globe. And then the gray icons are the data centers that are being planned or built as of now. So we are seeing a lot of activity on the east side of the US, similar to Western Europe. And here in Asia, we are aware that Amazon announced 3 data centers, one in India, one in South Korea, and one in China. So this is just give us a perspective of where they are located. So there's not only investment on the data center business, but there's also a lot of investments on the subsea infrastructure. The graph over here shows the amount of money that was spent and that will be spent between 2014 and 2019. Blue bars refer to the money that has been already invested between 2014 and 2015, and red bars is all the future, this is like cables that are being built and cables that were announced. So Latin America saw a lot of money spent these past 2 years, and this is mainly because 2 big cables came online. But then if we take a look at Asia and we add up the money that will be spent on the Trans-Pacific route, we come with about like more than $1.5 billion that will be spent on submarine cables in this region. But let's please keep in mind that maybe not all this money is going to be spent. A lot of money, I mean, a lot of cables get proposed, but they never get funded. So this is just an idea of how much money will be spent. And to put that on a visual representation, we're seeing a lot of activity of cables coming online on the Trans-Pacific. And some of the projects here are the Cable Faster, SEA US, as well as APG. And then we also have a lot of proposed cables here in the region. Like we see some systems here on the Maldives, and even Atisa. And then we also include here Simi Wi-Fi because it's landing in several nations here in the country. So it will be interesting to see this map again next year and see which cables stick around and which ones didn't, and then also to see which cables will be proposed. So I'm going to talk briefly about prices, because new infrastructure means a lot of new capacity. New capacity means competition, and competition means price erosion. So if you are a buyer, good for you. If you're a seller, not so good. I want to clarify that these prices are median monthly prices for a 10G wavelength. So the range of the actual data pool is different. So our low can be very low, or the high can be very high, depending on the route. So this is the median. And these prices are collected directly from carriers that offer these services in these specific routes. So there's something like, there are two things that we're seeing here, right? Expensive prices on one side and like cheaper prices on the other. And this has to do a lot with like connectivity. So if we take a look, Hong Kong, Tokyo, Singapore, Tokyo, and Hong Kong, Seoul, they do have the lowest prices for transport. And this is back to like the beginning of the presentation. It's based on how much access they have to international connectivity. But then we're seeing like the routes like Mumbai, Singapore, even Bangkok, Singapore, they're still remaining a premium. But something interesting, if you take a look at Mumbai, Singapore, is like the CAGR is the highest, meaning that like competition is finally kicking in, and hopefully prices will keep dropping. Unfortunately, there is no CAGR for Bangkok, Singapore in this time. It's because like our data for that route is pretty new. So maybe next year we'll be able to show the price erosion for this route. And similar to transport, IPT, they vary by city, and they're also going down. So same story, well-served markets, in this case, Singapore, Tokyo, Seoul. These are cities where traffic exchange, it's a common practice, versus newer traffic exchange markets like Bangkok itself. And if we even take a look at Singapore, which is the most competitive hub here in Asia, and it's about $4 per meg for a 10 gig circuit. It's still expensive if we compare to markets in Europe and markets in the US. In fact, Singapore is 4 times more expensive than London and Los Angeles. But hey, like the CAGR shows that prices keep going down, so hopefully maybe in the future we're going to see these prices converging. And I promise I was supposed to be fast. So here, the outlook. Demand in Asia is more than doubling every 2 years. Private networks demand is on the rise. Several cables are currently being built, and even more cables are proposed. And continued price erosion should be expected across the different routes here in Asia. And thank you. If you have any questions, I'm going to stick around, so feel free to like talk to me if you want. Thank you. Oh, hold on. One question.
Just one quick thing. Matt from Facebook. That was a embarrassing. When you were showing those stats at the very beginning of the presentation, I would assume that a very significant portion of what you label as China is actually Hong Kong. Yeah, no, I mean, politics aside, and the fact that I live in Hong Kong, I think from a networking point of view, that's very important to make that distinction, because that's very, very different markets.
Thank you for that clarification. This includes both. Hong Kong is included here, and it's just like a methodology definition that we use at telegeography.
Just a quick question. It's Jane from ISOC. Are you looking at all at the importance of cross-border connectivity and, no, but in the future, well, for internet. So what we're seeing in some regions is that as soon as you allow better cross-border connectivity, you're also looking at prices coming down because traffic can be exchanged faster. So do you have any analyses for the region on that, or will you do that in the future?
Sorry, and I'm here down. To your question, we do forecast prices, and we can definitely talk more about it, but you're right. Once we see that more internet, like at the international level, comes to a country, and like instead of relying on going back to like the big hubs like Europe and the States, prices tend to go down. Like your the money that you spend to like bring all this capacity is less. Your cost is less. Definitely, you can offer a better price to your clients, and that comes in line with your comment. And this is not only in Asia. This is happening across the world. Of course, there are like markets that are like emerging markets. Like Asia is kind of like in that transition. It used to be an emerging market, and it's becoming more a mature market with like more competition. But in Africa, the Middle East, and in Latin America, we still see very high prices, but the CAGR is very, very high, meaning like prices are like slowing down quite fast. Any other question? No? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Anai Ribata, for very interesting talk. And next, we have Kempe Fukuda. He is the Director of Network Services of NTT Communications Corporation. Please.
Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kempe Fukuda, and I'm from NTT Communications. Actually, earlier today there was some mentioning about OCN being not cooperative from IPv6. Yes, unfortunately, it's my network. I am really aware of why this is happening, so I'm hoping that next year or the year after this may change. So, but anyway, today I was actually asked by the organizer to talk about this topic, which, oh, should I do this way? Okay. So today I want to talk about some of the things about fiber optics and internet, and maybe some of the challenges that I foresee as an operator and also as a management personnel running the network. So today I'm planning to cover these topics. The first two items are more information for you. I think many of you know already, so I'll just run through it quickly. And after that, I'll talk in more depth about what we foresee from NTT as a challenge running a global internet in Asia. So, sorry I forgot to write the source, but this is how it's interconnected today. So you see a lot of traffic across the Pacific, and of course there's great, how do you say, mesh in Asia, and we see a lot of things going on around in the Indian Ocean, and of course needless to say about Atlantic. And So my responsibility is offering internet service around this area in Asia and Oceania. And so from there, I have to foresee many things, like trying to figure out how to get my Southeast Asian customers to Europe, for example, or the Australian customers to US, or maybe even the Northeast Asian customers to US and Europe as well. And here, so, come on. Is it too heavy? I don't know. Okay. So these are some of the cables that we use today. So this is more like real trans-Pacific from Asia to US. We see the old systems like Japan, US, or TGN, Tata, PC1 is our old, TP is also old. Quite new are AAG and Unity. Intra-Asia, these are some of the major ones, APCN2, this PACnet, sorry, I have to change it to Telstra. But these are the things that we see. And this is coming up soon. I heard it's next month? No. So, July or August. Finally, APG is coming. So that's going to help more of like Thailand and all the other countries around this region to have more connectivity or access to the global world. Transatlantic, there are so many cables running. And actually we use probably like 8 systems, I believe, out of these. Right. Going too fast. So Indian Ocean, now it's a very hot topic. There's A1 that's going to come up, and there's CME-V4 that's existing, I believe, and CME-V5 that's coming up sometime soon, I heard. Come on. CME-V4, CME-V5, and, well, anyways, I think I should talk more about what we have for ourselves. So this is the internet backbone that I'm taking care of today. I think some of the people may be familiar. This is AS2914, which is the former VIE network that I look after. And so as you can see, like in the Asia-Pac region, we already have more than 2 terabits of capacity. It's actually more, because this slide is a bit outdated. It's from at the end of last year. So since then, we've been adding more capacity, especially in Asia, not much in Trans-Pacific. So we foresee, and this is excluding our peering capacity. So I think we have about 2.5 to 3 terabits of capacity available across inside Asia. Okay. And this is something very interesting. This is the traffic that is coming from US to Asia. This is only our network, so it may be a little bit different, but dominant is going to Japan. But you can see like Singapore has a lot, Hong Kong has a lot, and Taiwan, there's small things like Taiwan, Australia, Korea, Malaysia, Indonesia. But what we can see is that there aren't so much traffic coming out from the other parts of Asia to US, from US. And if we highlight, come on. So this is Japan. So if you look at Japan, okay. So this is mostly from US, some from Europe, and some from, the Asia piece is about what? This is, I think the scale was 50, so fine. A little less than 100 gigs. Come on. Okay, this is Hong Kong. Hong Kong, we see a lot of traffic. Both it's Japan and US. And not much intra-Asia, but some going to Europe. Singapore is a lot, as you can see, there's a lot of traffic growing that is destined to Europe rather than to the US is now going a little bit down, and Japan is usually about the same. Okay, so today we use these kind of cables. Trans-Pacific is, PC1 is a cable that we acquired back in 2010. Japan-US is original consortium cable. This is Tata. This is my friend KDD and Unity. Google is here. Transatlantic, these are the cables. Intra-Asia, AAC is a cable that we built together with PLDT, Telecom Malaysia, and the others. SJC is the KDD and Google cable. APCN2, TP are the consortium. Westbound is we rely, westbound meaning we go to Singapore to Europe through the Indian Ocean. So we rely on CME4 and we are, so BBG, which is TM and cable and wireless and somebody else cable, that has RFS a month or two ago, and now they are provisioning some capacity for us. And unfortunately, this only goes to the Middle East. My BBG terminates in Oman, so from there we will ride on EIG to go all the way to Europe. And this is quite fascinating. I cannot wait longer to see how it's going to change the dynamics of the traffic flow. So, cables. So like across Japan and US, I have 110 gigs. Actually, I'm converting some of them to some of the 10 gigs to 100 gigs today. But still, we have to make sure that when one cable fails, there's still enough capacity to carry all the traffic from one point to the other. So what we do today is, if we have, like, if you see the cable routes, there are many two city pairs that have more than 4 cable routes. In those cases, we will do like 4 cable groups where we will combine some of the cables into one group and then form 4, so that I can usually then, if one fails, I can use like 75% of the capacity. But seems it doesn't make sense today. So today we are doing it like 67% utilization over the 4 cables. So we still have some room for additional burst capacity. If there aren't so many cable systems, for example, the most typical case is between Singapore and London or Europe. For example, there's CME3 and CME4, and there are new cables that came up, but we still believe that for those we will just do a 50% utilization, which is quite expensive, but make sure that it's redundant enough. And actually the cost, so cost is quite a headache today. The way we own capacity, we have 3 ways. One is our own cable, so we build it, like we join the consortium, or we find partners to build, so it's our own. The other is IRU, which is buying the rights for 15 years, and one is lease capacity. Some of the cables, when we look at the price, for example, one most typical case is transatlantic from US to Europe. The price of a 10 gig is now less than 10K per month, 10K US dollars. Which means I don't know when the price drop will stop, which comes back to I cannot buy IRUs, it's too risky. So the IRU is very, very difficult. It's like gambling. So like back in 2007, 2008, I bought a 10 gig capacity on IRU from Japan to US. That was a private cable, and it cost me, the total contract value was 3.2 million US for 15 years. Today, I can get it for probably 1 point something. So I lost my gamble. That goes the same for capacity between Singapore and Europe. The first one I bought my CMV4 was 8 million US for 10 gig. I thought it was very cheap. Now I can get a CMV4 for maybe less than half the price. So do I want to really buy IRU, or should I go lease? Or maybe I should build it on my own. But building on my own, still, I cannot foresee whether I can win my gamble, because the market price drop can sometimes exceed the actual, the cost of the cable. And this we cannot foresee, and so this is something that I'm having a very big headache today. So I just mentioned about this, and especially when I look at the niche routes, Thailand was a very good example. Going to Singapore or going to Malaysia are the only two options that we can see, except if we want to pay really, really expensive price to go terrestrial, asking the Chinese friends to carry us to Hong Kong. But even without that, going to Malaysia and Singapore is more expensive than going from Japan to Singapore or Hong Kong. There's another one from Singapore to Australia that's also very, very expensive. There are new cables that may come up. When that comes up, we may see a price drop, but what I hear from those carriers, the companies that are providing the cables, they believe those are premium routes, so they may just keep the price high, which means there's no business, they may disappear, or we may find somebody else to actually destroy the market for them. The other thing is resiliency. So in Asia, there are a lot of cable cuts. Actually, we experienced a very big one a few weeks ago, where 3 out of 6 or 7 cables that are available in Asia were cut. And that was quite a disaster. But if I want to make sure that I have all the traffic passing, then I need to pay more. I have to buy more cables from other companies. But then comes the question of how much can I sell to my customer. Today, the Singaporeans, I think it was Singapore and Hong Kong, the market for, like wholesale transit providers like ourselves, it's very, very bad. It's quite similar to Europe and US. It's like $2, maybe $2.50 for a 10 gig IP transit port. If I have to live up with that, there's no way I can afford additional cables. So that's a very big challenge that I'm foreseeing. And there's another thing where it's a very new concept. We are trying to talk with other service providers and carriers on mutual restoration. So each carrier has their own cables. Maybe we can share that when something happens. Like I hear that between Singapore and Indonesia, there's such a mechanism, but of course you have to pay for it. But I think that's a very good way to do, to keep up the internet connectivity. The other thing is latency, where gaming, video, for example, are getting to be quite latency sensitive. And that will require us not to route through the farthest For example, Singapore, if I go through US to Europe, it's cheaper. It's probably like at 2/3 of the price of going through the Indian Ocean. But customers do not permit that, allow that for us to do, which is very bad. And the last challenge I see is the OTT and the CDNs. They give, well, I won't say bad to me. But actually, so the Facebook, Google, Akamai, these people came to Asia, which is good. That saved a lot of capacity going to across the Pacific. This was very good because ever since 2012, 13, I believe, the traffic growth of the Trans-Pacific circuits, originally it was like 30%, dropped to like 10, 12, somewhere around that range. But at the same time, of course, the traffic intra-Asia is growing a lot, but we foresee a lot of the content providers' traffic to be, how do you say, the traffic trend is, how do you say, more closed within that region. Unfortunately, Thailand is still a bit more to go, but I hear a lot about Google, for example, has caching all of the service providers in Thailand. I don't. So that means everybody will not buy my transit, unfortunately, but it's too bad. But these are the things that's happening, and I think this is good, but we need to actually try to figure out how these content providers and the CDNs will, how to say, deploy their data center, their caches, their servers, so that we can be more intelligent to plan our network inside Asia. So this is what I see, like it's 20x. This is only, this is more Japan, but we see like in the 4 years, the traffic grew 20 times, and CDN is 5 times. And what was next? And you can see these are the people that dominate. Facebook is not that much. I don't know why. But this was more like one particular day where, but the Japanese customer tend to look at YouTube a lot more. Facebook traffic is a lot, but not huge. I think that's the only difference. So I think I spoke too much, so I should wrap up. My next area of interest, or what we foresee, what's coming next is, today we started to deploy 100 gig lambdas across the ocean. What is coming next? Is it going to be 400 gigs or 1 terabit? That's happening probably in the next 2-3 years, I believe. Next is, so when the capacity or the bandwidth port goes to 400 or 1 terabit, what is going to be the cost model? Do I still have to pay? So 100 gigs is probably 10 to 7 or 8 times 10 gig from cost perspective. So what will be a 400 gig? Is it going to be 3 times? If 3 times, it doesn't make sense because I have to renew all my how do you say, infrastructure to meet that 400 gigs. So we need to come up with something else, like maybe some of the players, even though we are competitive, we may be competitors, maybe can share the capacity, for example. And we can do on a per, how do you say, usage basis. Or maybe something else that may come up. The other thing is more Asia, Southeast Asia to Europe that's started to grow, but we still foresee a lot of challenge, probably in the middle, like the Middle East. Or maybe we have to start thinking about how to transit to Africa, where there's potential traffic that's coming. The other thing is subsea from Indian Ocean is quite risky. CME 3, CME 4 gets cut, it won't come back for a month usually. Maybe we need to find terrestrial cables, maybe more reliable cable system. And the other thing is new cables. So the telegeography person mentioned about new projects, but I think these are the things that's coming. But what else? I heard that there won't be any more new cables from North Asia down to Southeast Asia. The reason is because of the political uncertainty in the South China Sea area. So I don't know. I see more niche circuit, niche cables like Singapore, Indonesia to Sydney or Perth, for example, or from Sydney to New Zealand to US, for example. These may come, and these are coming, except I don't know about this one. Sorry. I don't know about Arctic fiber, but the rest I know are coming. So especially faster is like 2 months from now, that's coming up. But in any way, I think I was able to give you some food for thought about how to build your network and what will be the challenge when your traffic starts growing, when your customer base starts growing. So that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And we have the third speaker, Mr. Douglas Wilson from Hurricane Electric. Please welcome him on stage.
Hello. I just took a job at Hurricane Electric the last couple of months, and I'm thankful to be invited to share what little information I do have. I've been in the internet for seems like a long time. When I first started, I saw the BGP table. It was around 35,000, and now we're roughly 600,000. I thought when I first IMUXed my first DS1 into 3 megabits, I thought it was the most awesome thing on the planet. Putting together, N by 10 gig lags don't seem to have the same thrill anymore, or N by 100s. Anyways, next slide, please. Been around for quite a while, as I said. I've been an operator, so I've been up all night. I've been in the discussions with the big boys, and it's been a lot of fun. So next slide. At Hurricane, we have been around for about 20 years. As I said, I am new. The differentiator was a person named Martin Levy, who I used to work for back at XO, and you probably all know him. He talked V6, and Hurricane, along with NTT, are the leaders for the V6. I thought the NTT talk was excellent. He shared tangible examples of real-world experiences of how the cost-benefit of risk and reward of making long-term decisions can be awesome, or it can be quite painful, but only to be seen in hindsight. Next slide, please. Hurricane Electric Network is actually quite large, considering it is owned by one individual. He's an exceptional individual, kind of an enigma. Not many people are like that. I mean, Martin Levy's like that, and several others, but it seems to be that this fella has a propensity to read a lot of books, like one a day, and he is highly unusual in that sense. But he has a drive to want to eliminate illiteracy, and he thinks that by connecting the globe and all of the communities and building the communities, then we can help alleviate and eliminate war. And I think that that's an excellent point. Next slide. So Hurricane Electric has been growing by leaps and bounds, a substantial amount. Next slide. In the last year, have expanded considerably into smaller, more remote locations where a lot of cost benefit doesn't seem to be immediate returns. However, the point is that by extending, you do obtain some advantages, which would be first mover advantages, because people are dying to have you extend to them. As stated previously, many people want to look at their spreadsheets and say, oh, this is the next spot we need to go to. Everybody knows, I'd like to be in Singapore. I would like to be in Ashburn, Virginia. And of course, it's like going to or wanting to get into a very good party. Once the party is happening, you know you want to be there, but you're standing outside the door trying to get in. There's not enough electricity, there's not enough space, and so anybody can make that decision. So it's actually who's going to be the first one to put forth the effort and the money and rent a hall and invite people and realize that when you come early to a party, it's not always most fun. You're waiting for people to show up. I think that this is an incredible meeting in the sense that the BKNIX, I think, does have an awful lot of opportunity, and it is great to be part of this, the beginnings. Although it's a 1-year anniversary, I have a feeling that this exchange will take off exponentially. Next slide. So how do operators attract more members is, you can see Walt Wolney, who works for Hurricane, has done this talk, and he just gave this talk also. So you can see some of this stuff online. What I'd like to do is I'd like to share a few notes that I had in terms of, in lieu of how much people have shared, I feel compelled to want to help at least share my thoughts. And bear with me for being a little bit, because it's a little impromptu. But thanks to global transportation, communication, energy infrastructure, highways, airports, pipelines, electricity grids, and internet cables, and much, much more, we've determined that connectivity is destiny, from nations to nodes. Competitive connectivity is the arms race of the 21st century. Connectivity is how we make the most out of geography. The word infrastructure has been around for about 100 years, and it represents the physical capacity for global interaction. And we are in the early phases to facilitate surging flows of people, communities, goods, data, and capital. Only 25% of the world's trade between countries actually occurs between the borders, between them directly. Connectivity itself, along with demographics, capital markets, labor productivity, and technology, is a major source of momentum in the global economy. There is no better investment than connectivity. Gross fixed capital formation, which is roads, bridges, social infrastructure such as medical, education, is considered investment because in the long run, it generates widespread benefits for society. Historically, the US infrastructure has invested, and for every $1 spent, has returned $2. The gap between supply and demand for infrastructure has never been greater. The world is headed for 8 billion people, and it's really been pretty much designed for about 3 billion people. Supply and demand lead to a supply chain world, and the foundations of better connectivity. Supply chains are not things, but they're actually streams of transactions. We see participants and transactions. Supply chains are the original World Wide Webs. They are the world's plumbing, wiring, and the pathways by which everyone and everything moves. The internet is the newest kind of infrastructure which supply chains are built. Supply and demand dynamics have always driven social organization. In a supply chain world, inefficiency is the enemy. Connectivity is the main cause of complexity. Conceptual dynamics, to borrow from physics, is flow and friction. Fundamental properties are to maximize flow. We want to allow parts of a system to connect to these other parts. This is the story of flow and friction on an expanding scale. It's the yin and the yang. but greater flows can amplify risks. Sensible friction, the friction of the future, is to control this flow. Controlling connections. It's this search for balance and the local needs versus global connectedness. And it's a strategic battleground. Sensible self-serving frictions to generate home country advantages are smart frictions and not globalization, worries. All things in moderation. I tell you this because I feel it's important to share this level. So, strategic importance used to be physical territory, but now it derives from leverage exercised through connective reach. In the standard gravity model, trade grows with the size of communities and inversely to the distance between them. On this, when the internet is fully wired and in place, I'm told that the marginal cost of delivering services falls to nearly zero. I don't know if I fully believe that. But between the digitally connected societies, the only distance is political and cultural. Today's cities are ranked by their influence in global networks, and countries are run by supply chains, communities that know no borders, and companies that now have more power than governments. All are evidence of a shift towards new kinds of pluralistic world systems. So for Hurricane, we're a privately held network, and we do want to see change. We'd like to see change within the whole world so that we can all live in harmony. I know it sounds like a Coke commercial, but the fact is that internetworking is the nervous system, and building nodes such as what the BKNIX is and potentially will become is of paramount. And so I would like to leave you with, we are changing the world, and hopefully it is for the better. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. And okay, so now may I invite Associate Professor Surasak Sangwonpong, Director of BKNIX project under the THNIC Foundation, to present a gift of appreciation to all speakers in this session. Please. And may I invite the speakers also on stage? Anai Ribata, Kempe Fukuda, and Mr. Douglas Wilson. If you would like to see the slides of today's presentation, you can visit the BKNIX website at www.bknix.co.th. And now we'll have the second peering personal.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Vanita. For this round, we have 4 members. Please line up on the side of stage first. Mr. Duke from BKNIX, you please stay here. Second is Telecom Brunei, and the third is Facebook, and fourth is CAT. Okay, for your organization update, please send the slide to me or the event at bknix.co.th. So let's start the first one, BKNIX.
Well, I guess that doesn't work out so well. Anyways, we're autonomous AS 6939. We have over 100 locations. We do have an open peering policy. So again, that's a different philosophy from many, saying, hey, you must be this tall, else you pay. So we believe that if we hook on and become friends and derive value, then we will be most likely to be considered partners in the future. Hurricane, like I said, is privately held. We are in many locations. We're about to light up South Africa, and that is an expensive circuit, let me tell you. We just lit up Brazil, and that too was an expensive circuit, but especially when it's your own money. So thanks so much.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Duke. Next, Telecom Brunei. Slide, please.
Okay, thank you, VIE for this opportunity. Okay, just a short presentation on the introduction on Telbru, who we are. We are Telecom Brunei Berhad from Brunei Darussalam. Telbru is a leading service provider for fixed line, internet, broadband services, this line, and data services. Okay, our AS number is 10094. We are NSB and eyeball. Our traffic volume 40 gig. We are selective. We're considered to be more open because we just started, and we look forward to appearing with you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. So the next, Mr. Messenger from Facebook.
Hey, I'm Matt from Facebook. We run a social network. Our AS is 32934. I listed the locations here that I believe are actually relevant for you. We're obviously in way more than that, but those are the closest one to Thailand. So we do peer on the I-axis in Malaysia, in Singapore, in Hong Kong. We do not yet peer on BKNIX, but this is something we're trying to fix. So watch this space for the future. We do privately peer in pretty much all those locations as well. So again, the closest to here would be Malaysia, CX1, and obviously the kind of usual suspects in Singapore, Hong Kong. And we do have a local caching solution, what we call FNA. So this is something we actually place into your network. Most of you guys know that. It's actually quite interesting, the presentation we saw earlier showing that we are one of the largest contributors to Thailand's international bandwidth. That's actually a pretty small portion. We serve the vast majority of our traffic actually inside of Thailand. So that traffic you see on the international links is actually a fraction of what we serve. If you are interested in peering with us, please contact me. Our peering DB entry is there. That literally lists everywhere we are, and this is something that's actually mandatory. We do not peer with somebody if you don't have a peering DB entry. And contact me. I'm here today and most of tomorrow. Let me know.
Yep. Thank you, Matt. Okay, the last one is CAT or CAT from Thailand.
Okay, hi. My name is Surasit Pakunangsit. I am from the Communication Authority of Thailand, or the company you guys know as CAT Telecom. CAT is one of the key companies to drive the additional economic internet infrastructure in Thailand. And we are providing the submarine cable and also local fiber cable, and we are also acting as an internet transit provider. We are currently at 12 locations around the world, and we have our AS number is 4651. If you guys want to connect with us, you can get more information on the peeringdb.com. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. So, okay, I will end the peering personnel too. Yeah, thank you so much.